There, everybody. Welcome to our session here this morning, and we'll spend about an hour taking a look at rubrics and how they work inside of your Canvas course. So, um, if you'd like to follow along here today, please go ahead and log into Canvas, locate a course within which you want to do some work today, or you can always watch the recording later. The CTM will very generously make this available to you for your viewing pleasure later. I mean, Jennifer, do we want to go ahead and start with some introductions here?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Yeah, just welcome everybody on behalf of the Center for Teaching and Mentoring and MTSU Online and ITD. Our focus today is on grading and rubrics inside of Canvas. We welcome back our overly competent trainer, as always, Helen Wilson. So, Helen, teach us everything we need to know about grading and rubrics.
My pleasure. All right, so we're going to just quickly review our agenda just so you know what's coming. We're obviously going to create rubrics inside the rubrics area of your course. You'll also learn about some features such as how to duplicate, download, and import a rubric. If you, for example, would prefer to make a rubric through a spreadsheet, you can do that and import them into your course. Once your rubrics are prepared and ready, you'll need to attach them to assessments. So I'll show you how to attach that rubric to assignments, obviously, but also to quizzes as well as to graded discussions. We'll also understand how to use rubrics in SpeedGrader, especially when paired with the optional but very interesting and I think thought-provoking feature of self-assessment on the part of the student. Then I'll walk you through how you can view rubric results, not only in SpeedGrader, but also in students' gradebooks. You can even access rubric results from inside the gradebook yourself as an instructor. And I also want you to know how the student is able to view the rubric results too. So let's get into creating enhanced rubrics, but in order for you to be able to use the enhanced rubrics tool, you have to make sure that it's actually on. So inside of a course like this, if you go to the settings area of your course and go to a tab called Feature Options, you'll see when you get to the E's, the Enhanced Rubrics feature. I just want you to double check that it is indeed on, as it is here. If for whatever reason it happens to be off, please go ahead and turn that on. But I'd say it's very likely if you have not ever been back here, it probably is already enabled for you. Still, good idea to double check. Now that you have checked on that, let's take a tour of the rubrics area. So you'll want to search inside of your global, rather, course navigation for the rubrics link. Notice we don't customarily make this available for students to view. They don't need to see all the rubrics you're using in the course, just that one rubric that they want to be able to use and see for individual assignments. So think of this as your rubrics drawer, if that makes sense. Now, you see here on this screen a list of any and all rubrics that are part of your course. If you have not yet been here, you may not see anything. No worries, we're going to get some rubrics in here soon. Once rubrics are listed, you can organize them in various ways. So I just clicked on, hope this is easier to see now, these up and down arrows so you can reorder them. You can also order your rubrics by total points, number of criteria. You also see here a location used area. If you click this link, if you have it available, this lets you see where this particular rubric is attached. So it gives you a nice peek into, are you using the rubrics that you have in the course? And here they are. And it's especially useful if you need to delete a rubric, if you're not intending on using it anymore, because then you can go to that assignment and you can unlink it from that assignment. You also see here an actions menu too, with ways to edit the rubric, make a copy of it. That's great when you like the setup of this rubric, but you don't want to redo it for future rubrics. Copy it to other courses so that that copy could be used in other courses. You can also archive a rubric. This serves as a note to you that, this rubric has outlived its usefulness, but you can always go back and unarchive if you want to reverse that decision. And then you'll see here a delete option. Now, in the case of this rubric is not able to be deleted. And that's because I have A, already attached it to things, and B, students have already been assessed on the rubric. So we won't let you delete that. You can search for a rubric. And you also have here two intriguing buttons. You have an import rubric function, and then you have a create new rubric function. So here's where we're going to go ahead and start. Now, I want to kind of manage some expectations here. This is not the only way you can create a rubric. And as a matter of fact, for any instructors out there, I will show you another workflow later for creating rubric that you might actually prefer. So there are really two ways to get a rubric off the ground. This is just the first of two. So if you'd like to make a new rubric from here, click that button. And here's where you would enter in your preferred rubric name. Here's where you determine the type. Scale means you're intending on using levels or points, like 4 points for this, 3 points for that, 2 points for that. Or if you simply want to use it only for written feedback. If you do choose scale, you can choose whether you want it to display as level 4 or 4 points. Have the rating order display as 4, 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally, letting us know that you intend on scoring students on the rubric. So points will be shown to the student as, you have earned 3 points, you have earned 4 points. And right here, you start to build out your criteria. So you can click on Draft New Criterion here and enter in the first aspect of your assessment of students on this fictional problem set. Tell us how many points this is worth to you. So I'll go ahead and put 5 here. So see how everything kind of auto scales itself. If you prefer, only optional, you don't have to do this. You can enable a range. I find this helpful for cases when you do have to give, say, points that are not exactly as outlined. So you saw here when I did not enable range, that I have a choice of giving 5, 3.5, 2.5, 3.75, 2.5. But if on your way of grading things, you might prefer to have a range so that you can give student A 4 out of 5 and you can give student B a 4.5 out of 5. And you want to make that clear. In which case you can go ahead and enable that range so students can see the ranges of the possible points. But that is only optional. I can actually give a 4 or 4.5 at any time. Right over here is where you list the rating name, so exceeds expectations. The actual terms that are listed here are default, but you feel free to change them to whatever you prefer. And then right here is where you enter in the description. And then you enter in that description for actually all of the criteria. You get the idea here. And I'll just do one more. Now, just to show you here, right, if you don't have need of a particular level, you can remove it. You have a little trash can for it. And as you hover over See this area in between rating descriptions, this little plus button appears, so you can add a rating level directly in that area if you want. Finally, it may come up, I'm sure if you're trying to make rubrics quickly, you can actually drag and drop criteria in case you happen to have made them out of order the first time. So then here I would go ahead and click on Save Criterion. And if I wanted to see more information about it, I click on this arrow to view my entries. I see the total points, a way to edit, trash this criterion entirely, or I can duplicate the criterion. I think this is super helpful if you like the ratings levels, you like the names, you just want to adjust, some of the rating descriptions for your next criterion, but it lets you quickly make use of a criterion you already built so you don't have to retype everything. And we'll go all the way to edit this particular criterion, but just to show you here, there's our second criterion listed. So you could make this rubric pretty quickly if you wanted to. And you also see here three dots, just like with the individual criteria where you could move them up and down. You can also move these criteria up and down. So I'll just move accuracy down, and I'll do that with accuracy again, that you can move that back up. Now, we'll pretend that our rubric is good to go. So at this point, you definitely want to at least save. Notice the language here, though. It says save as draft, meaning to you, this is not ready, right? I had to finish this up quickly and then I had to go to class. I'm going to go back to it. So notice you get a little notice that this is in a draft state. And if you ever need to go back, you can click on the three dots here and go to edit, add what you need to add. You also see here a preview rubric area, and this lets you view how this rubric will look in SpeedGrader, just so that you're not surprised when you see it there. And so let me take this opportunity to show you. There's three views that you can choose to turn on, all of which are great. It's just personal preference. The first is that traditional format, which lists all information, the ratings descriptions, as well as the ratings themselves with points. But as you'll see when we get to SpeedGrader, this does take up a lot of room in SpeedGrader. So you'd have to be okay with that unless you choose a different view. You see horizontal takes up far less space. So the student's work would be here and then your rubric would be here. But you couldn't see the description of each ratings levels unless you clicked on the square. And at all points, whether you choose that traditional view or this more compressed view, you'll always be able to add comments. And the vertical view is really similar. You see the values just appear from top to bottom. That's the only difference. So that's the preview area. But if this is the final rubric in all of its glory, click on Save Rubric, and then that draft state has now been taken away. So this is good to go as far as you adding it to discussions, to new quizzes, to assignments. So let me pause here and just see if there's any questions on the part of anybody here.
Helen, I just want to make sure, because I think we've already gone over this, but I just want to solidify it.
Mhm.
Once a rubric has been used
Mhm.
to assess something, you cannot go back in and re-edit that. Is that correct? You'd have to make a copy.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure. Thank you.
All right. So we've seen that what I'd call option one for this session, and that's creating a new rubric through the button here. But you also see here an import rubric button. And so let's talk about that. Uh, as you can tell, it's cute to be talking about making rubrics by hand now, especially if you're not participating in the early adopter stage and you're just finding out more about Canvas now. But when it gets really busy in your semester, right, and you still have to make rubrics, you might welcome some shortcuts, right? Anything that you can do to speed up the process. So you might like the import rubric function because this lets you create rubrics on a spreadsheet and then upload the spreadsheet. Now, there is a template you can download, you can put into Excel, edit, and make that your own. Once you have your template all figured out, you would then just click the spaceship here, locate the spreadsheet, and then it becomes part of your rubric space. But because I want to be good, I want to be a good friend to you, I want to show you here what the rubric spreadsheet should look like. So you have here in the first column the title of the rubric, and you see it's repeated. That's because each of these criteria pertain to the same rubric. And although this particular spreadsheet only creates one rubric, you could create multiple rubrics. So if I had a, I don't know, calculus exponentials project rubric, I would just then put that second rubric name here, right? And then put all of the criteria related to that. And then if there was a calculus logarithmic project rubric, you get the idea. You put all of the criteria for that third rubric all together. So you could ostensibly create 10 rubrics on a single spreadsheet. So all for the same rubric, right? I have 5 criteria. I just put their names here. I put the criteria description. And then right here, this column here is where if you want to enable a range, then say true. If that doesn't matter to you, if you don't care about that, then you can either put false or you just leave it blank. It doesn't matter. And then the subsequent columns, rating name, rating description, rating points, all pertain to one particular level. So for mastery, no errors, rating points are 4. The next rating name down is proficient with a rating description of minor errors, and then rating points is 3. So the next sequence of columns is pretty repetitious. So you have 3 for each of those levels, right? So here's the 3 for developing, and then here's the 3 for beginning. And if you had another rating level after this, then you would just put rating name, rating description, rating points. And then in this rubric, this would all be 0. Does that make sense? So that is the rubric. Admins, I'm happy to share this with you. I could email this to you if you want to see it. So once you have your rubric crafted, you would need to go ahead and download yourself a copy, and we accept CSV. I'm just going to save that to my desktop here. Then I go back to my rubric area. I do import, and then you can click on this on the little spaceship, or I can just drag it. So here it is right here. All right, and so there is my calculus derivatives project rubric. Any rubric that you create through these means will always appear in draft because we want you to check. So check it by going to the 3 dots here, going to edit, right? You can take a look at it and all of the details that you thought you created. And you can still edit this because you have that pencil here. And then just make sure to save as a rubric so that you can use that to attach to a future assignment. And notice here, right, these 2 rubrics I just made do not have a courses and assignments reference because they're not attached to anything. So that is how you can import rubrics that are made through a spreadsheet. Now, if you ever had to, for example, get a CSV download of all these rubrics. You could, so you can check off however many checkboxes for the rubrics that you want to download as spreadsheets, and then click download selected rubrics. So if you're wondering, why would I do that? Good question. What if you had created some rubrics on a spreadsheet, but then you lost the spreadsheet, right? It happens, right? You just lost track of it. It's gone. It's nowhere. And now you're interested in creating more rubrics. You just don't have a spreadsheet to use. And maybe you're not comfortable with the template. So what you could do is you could download a rubric, right? I can import that into Excel and then I can just edit that copy because anything you download from here will have the appropriate format to use to create future rubrics on a spreadsheet. Does that make sense? So that's one reason why you might want to download your rubrics. All right, so that is what I call option one for creating rubrics, and that's by going to the rubrics link here and then either going through the buttons to create the new rubric or import through a spreadsheet. But now you may be wondering, what is option two then, Helen? If you have a one, then you must have a two. So let's take a look at option two. Option two, and one that I honestly think may be easier for instructors. It may make more sense to them and their workflow, is to create the rubric in the context of an assignment. So make your assignment with all of its settings, save it, publish it. And then right here, you have a way to create the rubric from here, which I think is helpful because when the instructor has just finished making the assignment, they may already be thinking about how to assess it already, in which case they want to go ahead and put that down and make sure that it's part of the rubric here. So when I click on that Create Rubric button, I'm brought right away to the Create Rubric space. And I go through the same steps, by the way, to create it. I'll put chapter 3 here. Including the name, type, drafting a new criterion, all the steps are the same. I also think an advantage of creating the rubric this way is that you can set the rubric settings right away. Now, when it comes to best practices here, I think it is easiest for students to understand that the points earned in the rubric are what is the student's grade. So the allocation of all those points in the rubric get added up, and in the grade book, that's their grade. In which case, you do have to check off this box, use this rubric for assignment grading. And that will make it so that points earned on the rubric will add up automatically and appear in the assessment box in SpeedGrader. Otherwise, if you don't have this checked off, you can still use the rubric, don't get me wrong, you can, but you would have to manually add up the points and then type in the total points in the box. I think it depends on if you would find that irritating to do or not. So go ahead and check off that box here, and then you would go through it and draft your new criteria, save as draft, and then save it from here. And then you'll have a Create Rubric button. When you make a rubric from this area, it will be saved to your rubric space. So don't worry, you can use this rubric for future assignments too. Now, but Helen, you had us go through all of those steps to make the rubric in the rubric space. I know. If you did that, you can still use those rubrics, in which case I would do find rubric. And now this lets me pick the rubric that I had just crafted inside the rubric space. So go ahead and choose this rubric here. Just click on the circle and then click on the arrow if you want to see the rubric. In the drop down here, you can even access rubrics in other courses. or I can search for a rubric, right, if I have just way too many. So go ahead and choose this right here, calculus problem set rubric, and then click add. Now that it's attached, I can still preview it, unlink it, right, and pick something else. I can replace it, find another rubric. I can edit it from here or see if I can edit here. Right, you see here, this one has already been used in more than one place. I'm getting a warning message related to that. And then you also see here an interesting checkbox, which is an option to be sure. You don't have to check it. But if you choose this option here, once students have submitted, they can actually use the rubric to assess themselves. And to be clear, they are not allowed to give themselves points. They are not allowed to grade themselves and have that go to the grade book. This is more of a metacognitive tool. So the student can click on squares in the rubric and you can see what the student said about themselves in SpeedGrader. That could inform how you assess the student, or that could maybe lead to some great discussions with the student about what this rubric means. So think of it as a tool to help educate students on the rubric. So go ahead and enable this just so that you see what that's like later. All right, so I have enabled self-assessment, and let me go ahead and pause here. It's a natural break. Any questions about what you've seen so far?
So Helen, just to clarify, when you do the find rubric, when you're attaching, it does not allow you to set that use for grading. So you have to go back in and edit. Is
That's
that
right.
correct? Okay.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me, actually. Once I did the find as rubric, you click on the pencil, and so you'd have to click use this rubric for assignment grading just to make sure that the points add themselves up in the assessment box. All right. Any other questions? All right. Let's talk about discussions. And I say this because you might very well want to have a graded discussion and grade student replies on that rubric. So here is such a discussion here. I know we're used to that create rubric, find rubric button by now, but you don't have it available to you even as an instructor, at least not here. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to the three dots in the corner right here. And if you do indeed have this set as a graded rubric, you should have an add rubric choice. If you don't, go into edit and make sure to check off graded. So make sure that you do have a little graded checkbox here because ungraded discussions cannot be graded on a rubric. So when you go to add rubric, there is that add rubric button, but you'll see here that the interface looks different than the interface you saw in rubrics and when you try to attach a rubric to an assignment. This is because at this point in time, graded discussions are making use of the classic rubric interface, which is actually why that tool is called Enhanced. The Enhanced Rubrics tool has more functions. The classic rubric function, which you see here, has fewer options, but it is still functional and you can still use it here to create a rubric for your discussion. It's just that it looks different. So here's where you would name the rubric. Click on the pencils to edit those places. So add in your criteria and your description. Here is where you add in the ratings level. So click on the pencil again. You can edit the points, rating title, and description. And you can add additional ratings levels here in the plus button. And there are additional plus buttons that pop up, so you can add as many ratings levels as you want. Then here's where you tell us the total number of points. So if I wanted to allocate this as, say, 10 points and save it, everything reorganizes themselves as far as points go. And then you would click on plus criterion to add a new one. If you wanted to just duplicate the existing one, you could. So this leads you to the duplicate where you add in your additional info. And then right here are the settings, which are also actually part of the enhanced rubrics area. This is the option for if you want it to just deliver written feedback. And you can still give points, like 8 points, 9 points, 7 points, but you don't have the ratings levels to fall back on. You would have to do a really good description of your assessment of that criterion. Here's where you can still use the ratings levels, but no numbers. That's great for a formative assessment, right? A first draft. There's this use this rubric for assignment grading, which, if checked, remember, means the points automatically add up in SpeedGrader. And then you would click on Create Rubric, and then that saves that. If you wanted to find a rubric, use that magnifying glass here. And notice you could pull from any of your shells, but since I have a rubric ready to go, I pick it here, and then I click Use this rubric. With options again to try to edit. Again, I've used this rubric before, so it's telling me I can't do it. Find a new rubric or just remove it. So it is the same, I don't want to say the same rubric interface. It has the same functions as the interface, but it definitely looks different. And then when it comes to new quizzes, so go ahead and pick that new quiz, and then in the assignment details, scroll all the way down to the bottom, all the way. And then you have here the same create rubric, find rubric buttons that you saw when we dealt with assignments. So it's the same workflow as for assignments. All right, any questions about graded discussions and quizzes?
And just to kind of confirm with discussions, if you add checkpoints where you have, a differentiated due date, so to speak, you can only have one rubric per activity. Is that correct? So there wouldn't be a way necessarily to have a rubric for the checkpoint as opposed to a rubric for the first initial post.
That's correct. Actually, I can show you that briefly if you want to see, Karen. Should be, let me go back here, right here. And let me refresh the screen here. So all of the replies are inside of SpeedGrader here. And so here you can type in the point value, right? Whatever points, number of points for the initial reply, and then a total score for all of the required replies. So in this case, the student had to do one reply and do two replies to two other students. So it's 5 points possible for the two replies together. And then you can type in the total in the box here once it pops up. Now you still can attach a rubric, which I would recommend just so that students can see why you're giving 5 points or 4 points or 2 points. But if you try to click on the squares here, right, and do submit assessment, so that's 10 points, but you notice that points don't add themselves up. So you would still have to type it in, right, 5 and 5. So I think it's still helpful to have a rubric. It's just that you can't use the rubric in quite the same way as you can with assignments. And again, like because it's got the full descriptions of what the points mean, it can offer students clarity on why you gave me 2 or why you gave me 5. All right, that's a great question. All right, so let's revisit our assignment. If you remember our Unit 3 assignment here, this problem set, where I enabled self-assessment. And I have that rubric attached. So we're going to have Bruce here go ahead and submit his rubric, or his work rather. So here he is. He's on Unit 3. He goes to try to find his work. I didn't make him do his work. Oh, here it is right here. And then he submits. Hurrah. Once his work has been fully submitted, we will see a new button down here. It's going to be called self-assessment. So we may have to give that we have to give that a little while. Oh, there we go. So you see now he's got this self-assess button. So let's review the self-assess feature here for a sec. It does have to be enabled before students get to it, not after. There are no official points registered by the student into the gradebook. So this is all informal assessment by the student. The student's assessment of their own abilities on the rubric is visible in SpeedGrader. I also don't know of a way to add a deadline to this. This is a good question. Can I say require like you have to do your self-assessment by Friday? I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could tell students that. I'm sure you could make a different assignment and make that different assignment be the assessment piece for that, but you can't do it from inside of this assignment. So Bruce goes and decides to self-assess himself. So notice here, by the way, this is the horizontal view, right? He doesn't have a choice. The choice of view is not up to him. So he goes and assesses himself here. And then they click Submit Assessment. Great. Notice they could still go back here and change theirs. Oh, well, actually, can they? No, they can only do it once. I take that back. All right. Well, Bruce has turned in his work. Just going to refresh my screen here. And we're going to take a look at assessment here for Bruce. All right, so we're going to focus on the rubric area, obviously. You can choose your format, traditional, horizontal, vertical. By the way, you see here, view student self-assessment. I can choose to turn that on, right? And so this faint dotted line appears to let me know this is what Bruce thought. And I even see here like a comment. There's Bruce's comment right there. So if I want, I can take Bruce's assessment into consideration, or I don't have to. And then here I just enter in my assessment here. Oops, 5 points. And then click Submit Assessment. Now, because of the way that I attach this to the assignment, the points earned from the rubric auto-tabulated here. So they added up automatically for me. And I can also change the status of the assignment here too. All right, so that is a SpeedGrader. Any questions on that experience in SpeedGrader for our educators?
If you were to, so you've set up your rubric to include a comment area in addition to whatever criteria, description, expectation you've set. Is it possible to use the comment library within that rubric comment area?
Oh, I wish, but no. It only appears in the main box here. Although I wonder, this is awkward, but I suppose you could just do this, right? I could just do Command or Control X and then just paste it in the comment box, but there's not a separate comment library for rubric comments. That would be nice though. All right, so that's the instructor view. And I think that self-assessment piece could be very valuable for students. But as you can see here, you don't have to unless you really want to. Can you edit your own comments? Yes, you can. So I'll just edit this a little bit. Yep, and then the comment should save. And you can obviously edit your comments too inside the comment library as well, or your comments here. All right. So that's that full experience. Now, our student here will no doubt want to be able to access their results. So let's take a look at that. Uh, and if you have attended any of our grading and feedback sessions, you know that even as yourself, as an educator, you can access student grades, aka what they see when they look at their grades. So you go to the grades area here. You can go to the name of that student here because it is a link. And then right here, you can click on the grades button. And you'll have to excuse Bruce. He's not actually very attentive. But for assignments that he has submitted, and so here's some, there is right here a little clipboard. The clipboard lets you and the student access the rubric results. So they have to click on the symbol here. They see the comments, they see the points that you gave them. And if for any reason, if they wanted to open up all rubrics all at once, like all scores all at once, they can click on Show All Details and it should open up all of the results for all rubrics, for all assessments in the course. Now, on the student side of things, if they have not yet seen a rubric score, they will see a blue dot in the corner. That's supposed to draw the student eye towards that area to tell them, hey, you should look at this. But it's not possible for you to see that they saw it. So let me offer some proof of that. We're going to have Bruce check his grades. So keeping in mind, right, Bruce is his own independent self. So you see right here, right, Bruce has several blue dots on this particular assignment, including a blue dot on the rubric area. So that shows Bruce hasn't seen it, right? But in my view of Bruce's scores, I can't see that blue dot. So it is up to the student. You have to let them know if there's a blue dot, you need to look at it because there's some great feedback in there to help you get better. All right, and then as far as instructors are concerned, there's some additional things you should know about rubrics inside the gradebook. Because once you have enhanced rubrics enabled inside of the course, you'll see some additional entries here that you may not always be able to see. These are bulk download rubrics and import rubrics. So the bulk download rubrics option, especially for a set of assignments that have already all been graded on the rubric tool, lets you download a spreadsheet of all of the student results on that particular rubric, which you might find helpful. The alternative is just clicking through SpeedGrader to see how student A did on this, now student A did on this other criterion, and then click and then go to the next student, student B. She had this score on that rubric and go to student C. That's a lot of clicking. So if you prefer, you can just get a spreadsheet of all of those results all in one. And I'll show you one here. Again, keeping in mind my students are not very studious, but it gives you an idea. So you get the ID of the student, student name, rating, points, and then even the comments that you gave. They are all represented on the same spreadsheet. So that you know at a glance, I gave Abed a 3 on this particular criterion, right? I gave Bruce a 5 on this particular criterion. So it offers that great summary of all rubric results on one view. So that's that bulk download option. It is obviously not available for any assignment that you did not attach a rubric to. Finally, you do see here an import rubrics option. I don't think this is as well used, but it could be helpful. There may be instructors out there that prefer to record rubric scores on a spreadsheet first, right? And then I want to import them all into Canvas. In other words, I don't want to do SpeedGrader. So there is an import function where you can import your results into the column. And so you would need to have a correctly formatted spreadsheet like this. You would have to edit the titles for the ratings levels, the points, and the comments. But once you have these all these data represented on the spreadsheet, you can download it, right? Just use CSV. And then here I can upload it, right? Just drag and drop your CSV here or choose the file to upload. And then all of the rubric results should auto-populate. All right. And because we've been so attentive, I think we're going to end a little early, unless you have questions. Let me open up the floor. Anything we need to see again, or you want to discuss or bring up in regards to rubrics?
We will wish you a good, happy Monday and hope the rest of your week goes well. Get in touch if we can be of any assistance, and we will see you again soon.
See you
Thank
all
you.
soon. Thank
Bye,
you.
Helen.
Bye. Well, have a wonderful day.